And we welcome back Jim Jarrett from, well, you're doing so much now. Last time you were here, as I was saying, if the viewers remember, you did look a little like Sandy Meisner. Now you're doing Vincent, Vincent van Gogh, and I'm glad it's coming back because you told me, I read so much about it. It's going to be produced here in San Francisco starting when?
May 4th is the opening night for a 3-week run. It's a limited run at the Academy of Art in San Francisco.
Which is on?
79 New Montgomery is the main campus for the Academy of Art, and that's where the theater is as well.
It's fantastic that they're bringing this back and that you're back. And the big news is that when you were here the last time, you were just about to launch a school with the Sandy Meisner method. And now I gather it's a tremendous success.
No small effort there, thanks to you as well, and helping us get the word out. We opened our play on Sandy at the Magic in August, and in September we opened the school, and 3 classes filled immediately. We have a wonderful waiting list. And
now Vincent's going to be produced, and you're going to be starring in it, and then this is fantastic.
I know. I'm very grateful and appreciative.
Now tell me, we had 2 actors on last week. You taught them, and one was from a background in Shakespeare, and Chris Meehan. That was Melissa Thompson Isaiah, and Chris Meehan is from comedy. And yet, when I went to see the play, as you asked me to watch you perform, I thought it was a very intense, dramatic lesson. But it can be applied to comedy. It can be applied to Shakespearean characters as well.
Great acting is great acting, period. I think I often use Seinfeld as a wonderful example of what quality acting is. And they are, you believe them. They're doing, they're not playing the joke. So one of the most successful comedies of all time, I often hold up as a wonderful example of believable acting. And as far as Shakespeare goes, for me, I'm not a big fan of Shakespeare, which I know is very sacrilegious, but oftentimes it's because the training for a lot of it is so into the language versus really what it is that you're doing, what you want, the heart and pulse of truly believable work.
One of the things Melissa said, who was on last week, she said, of course, it's poetry too. I mean, Shakespeare wrote in a very formal language. She said something interesting. She said, what it taught me to do is to get to the point where my character would be uttering those words. And I thought that was fascinating. So in other words, she was almost getting inside Shakespeare as he was creating this character. What would make her say these things, even in that poetic language? That's fantastic.
That's Sandy's training right there. You have to earn the right to speak those lines. Sandy used to say anyone can memorize lines. That doesn't make you an actor. Anyone can be a member of Screen Actors Guild. That doesn't make you an actor. Can you turn that cold piece of paper into a believable human being? And to do that, you have to know what you're saying in every single moment, what it means to you, so that it's not just words coming out of your mouth.
And also, one thing that you brought out when you were here, and you brought out in the play, is you have to almost go back and have all the history of that character at that moment. You have to have all those bad experiences that have occurred to make that person feel and do what he's going to do at that moment.
The Vincent show is a perfect example. I spent 2.5 years just working on the part before I ever performed it in public, earning the right to speak those words. To stand on
Vincent, huh?
I devoured everything I could, not only on Vincent, but the whole piece is about, actually, ironically, it's entitled Vincent, but it's really presented more by his brother, Theo. It's often pronounced Theo, but it's actually Theo. I walk on stage a week after Vincent's death as Theo.
You're Theo?
Initially. That's how the play
his
starts.
Brother.
It starts that way. During the course of the evening, I get to play both brothers. So again, you're having to develop both of these lives, these stories. And the opening line of the piece is, last week when I buried my brother, there was so much that I wanted to say. Well, to do this well, you have to fill in all that happened in that week's time, so that when you say those words, there's something behind it. If you, an example I like to give is, I don't know, what's your favorite holiday? I'm asking.
Favorite holiday? I don't know. I guess Thanksgiving.
Okay. Now, that answer came because there's history. There's a reason why. My least favorite, for example, is Halloween. I don't like Halloween. And that comes from a history as well. Well, if you have to say those lines, whatever those words are, I love Portland, Oregon, I don't like, Halloween, that would come from something. And that's the work on the part the audience never sees, they just feel.
You know, you keep hearing, especially someone like, say, Tom Cruise, or the actors who get multi-million-dollar contracts, they're going to play character, and they always say, well, I spent 7 months, with a fireman, so I can learn about firemen and so on, and really feel what they go through. I mean, they owe that for the millions they're getting, right, to spend some time on it. The difference, there's a big difference between that, and there's also a big difference between, well, maybe you could tell me, because I never really got this, the difference between what was called method acting and the Meisner method. If you could distinguish the two, how would you distinguish them?
The method these days has been so, there's so many different interpretations of the method that there's not really a generic meaning anymore. The biggest difference where Sandy and, for example, and Lee Strasberg just split apart was Sandy believed you didn't have to have a horrible upbringing and all this angst inside you to be a terrific actor. What you needed was a childlike imagination. That was talent for an actor, not some messed up childhood, and emotional memory and sense memory. And for some actors, that works, and that's great. But for Sandy, his approach was, through a developed imagination, anything's possible. That is such an oversimplification of the two. Both Lee Strasberg and any method teacher who is legitimate, and any teacher of the Meisner, they all want the same thing. They want their students to produce truthful behavior under these imaginary circumstances.
However you get there.
However you get there. And that was the greatness of Sandy Meisner. He never felt his way was the right way or the only way.
What, when you go to the classical, and we talked about Laurence Olivier, who has real contempt for what we're talking about here. He believes it's very external, very contrived. You're brilliant because you can develop the tone of voice, the gestures, and so on. Nothing has to be going on inside. In fact, he's insulted that I would have to feel something to be a great actor. I can feel whatever I want while I'm on stage. What do you say to that?
There's a wonderful segment in the Sandy show where, well, it's actually not in the piece because I took that out, where Sandy talked about Laurence Olivier one day in class, and he says, I maintain that he's not a great actor. He's a good actor. He can do the externals, the effects, the accents, or whatever, but in terms of the depth of emotion needed for a part, he isn't able to go there on a consistent basis. His work demonstrates that. I agree with that. I know it's harsh, but look, the bottom line is, the greatest compliment you can pay an actor is, do you believe them? Do you believe that moment? Do you believe that moment? And just hold that up.
Tell me about now, how do you make Vincent believable? What, after you did all the training and reading and so on, did you feel that you knew who he was, so that you could be him for a few hours every night?
Absolutely. 2.5 years of working on it. I've toured the show 10 years. We've been touring this piece for 10 years.
What's going on this time that's maybe different?
I'm a better actor.
Okay.
And hopefully next year
it'll... What does that mean?
Well, any artist who's sincere and legitimate is growing constantly in your art.
Do you see differences between this Vincent and the Vincent from maybe the last time?
Oh, we just did a bunch of performances in Hawaii to celebrate the 10-year anniversary where I gave birth. It's different every night. Not radically different, then something's wrong. But because we don't act, we don't try to give a performance, we don't pretend, we just use what exists. It's different each night. Now that said, every single time I walk off stage, I give myself notes in terms of what did I do well, what didn't I do well, and the next night I go back at it and try to grow into those teaching points. And so it's a constantly evolving. There are the difference between the piece 5 years. I mean, can you imagine working on a part for this long? And now, one thing, if I ran for 10 years every night, it'd be over. But I get breaks. I get nice breaks. I take the summer off. So, oh my, it's matured into a very rich evening of theater.
And you enjoy it.
I love it.
It's you enjoy doing it each night.
Oh, it's a. When I first got the piece, one of my former students sent me the play. It said, "This play was written for you." And I'm looking at it and going, Vincent van Gogh, the guy that cut off his ear, and that's all I know about him, really, the sound bite. And then I read the play, And it's the story of a dreamer who had passion and integrity, who wasn't doing it for a dollar bill, but because he felt he'd figured out why God had put him on the earth.
Why did he pick up everything so late in his life and go to the south of France? It's a beautiful little village. I saw it on the documentary. You would never imagine he was doing all his painting there. The kind of paintings he did. Beautiful, beautiful area. What happened, and how do you capture that? I mean, why does he move? How did he get it?
Well, okay.
How did he get it that he had to move to South France?
He got kicked out of his brother's house. He wore his brother out in Paris. It's finally like, you got to go. You got to go after about a year of living together. So he moved him down to Arles, where he spent some time, where he could live cheaply, where he could paint in nature, which was free. He couldn't afford models anymore in Paris. His funds were low. But in terms of, he started painting at 27. He kills himself at 37. 10 years. He taught himself to paint and then matured into his genius in a 10-year period.
What span of time do you take the character?
It opens a week after Vincent's death.
But as a character of Vincent, you are there as a character of Vincent.
He first comes alive. It's early. He's a preacher. He starts off. Vincent was a preacher. He followed his father's footsteps, and that is reenacted, if you will. I portray Vincent preaching during a chapter of his life. And he's in his early 20s at that point. And then, of course, all the way up to the last letter that he ever wrote to his brother at age 37 is also brought to life by me. So it spans a 15, 17-year period as well.
And how close is that last letter to the end?
It's the last letter he wrote. Theo found it in his pocket when he came to find him on his deathbed. He had written his brother this very last letter. So the day of.
What was in that letter?
It was talking about he had sold his first painting. His one and only painting had sold 4 months before. And he wrote to him about how the struggle wasn't worth it. What's the use? It's not happening. I'm worn down. I'm beat up. One of the things when I go on tour and talk to kids and everyone's celebrating Vincent, I'm like going, he killed himself. That's not a good finish to the story. He didn't have balance in his life. This is all he did for 10 years. He didn't eat well. He didn't take care of himself. He didn't go on vacations. He didn't have people to love him and hug him. He just painted. And of course, we know what that one note will do to any life. And so it just beat him up. Even after selling a painting and things looking on the upswing, his mental health improving, his heart gave out.
Do you want, or does the audience leave feeling that he was a tragic character that you just portrayed, a sad, or was he at least completed? What do you think?
I love that. I love that question.
You only got 1 minute, though, to answer.
Okay. He inspired. The audience leaves inspired because they experienced more than the soundbite that they thought of Vincent, this crazy madman who cut off his ear. They realized that he had so much integrity and passion, obviously. But most of all, he was a sweet, sensitive man who really did feel. It inspires audience members to go figure out why they're here as well. This is a life of passion. This is a life of purpose. It only lasted 37 years, but oh my goodness, what a life.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Good.
I'm going to come and see it.
Good.
Jim Jarrett, thanks for coming back. And the school's doing great. You're doing great. And we'll see where you are the next time.
Thanks for your support. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time. For program schedules, post-production notes, and free streaming video of select interviews, visit our website at www.sfunscripted.com.